we can call to order the meeting of the MPO Policy Committee meeting for March 12th, 2021. And introductions, I'm Lisa Ridge, Monroe County Highway Director. And I guess I'll just call out the next person that I see on my screen so we don't overlap. And so, Sarah?
Yes, Sarah Reiterman, CAC Chair.
Kate?
Kate Wiltz, Monroe County Council.
Penny?
Penny Giffens, Monroe County Commissioner.
Pamela?
Pamela Samples, Ellisville Town Council.
Margaret?
Margaret Clements, I'm a representative from the Monroe County Plan Commission.
Scott?
Scott Robinson, Director of Planning and Transportation. I'm proxy for Mayor John Hamilton, City of Bloomington.
Nate?
Hello, Nate Nickel, City of Bloomington Public Works Department.
Jason?
Jason Bannock, representing Indiana University.
Lou?
Lou May with Bloomington Transit, and I'm not supposed to be proxying for Kent McDaniel. He told me he is planning to be here.
Okay. And then we have Chris.
Chris Wallman, representing NDOT.
Okay. And then, of course, we have our great staff, Pat Martin and Ryan Clements.
Thank you. Thank you, Lisa.
So next on the agenda is approval of the agenda as submitted, as presented.
A motion for approval of the agenda.
We have a motion
Second.
and we have 2 seconds, Sarah and Penny. Any comments from the public? Seeing and hearing none. So we'll do a roll call vote for that, for approval of the agenda.
All right. Ryan, you want to do that?
Yep, I'm on it.
Okay.
All right, Ryder Band,
Yes.
Samples,
Estein wasn't here.
Ridge,
Yes.
Wiltz,
Yes.
Bannock,
Yes.
Githens,
Yes.
Nickel,
Yes.
Wallman,
Yes.
Robinson,
Yes.
Clements.
Yes.
Is there anyone I missed?
Kate? Oh, okay.
Okay, that is 901.
Pat?
Just for the record, I want to let you know that I've got a missed call from Kent McDaniel, so that probably means he can't get on. So Lou, could you get a hold of Kent and possibly make sure that he gets on?
I'll
Thank
see
you.
what I can do.
Okay, thank you so much.
Okay, the next item is approval of the minutes from February 12th, 2021. We did have 2 corrections that were sent. The name under attendance should not appear twice. That was just a transcription mistake. And the other item has to do with the BMC MPO will use surplus fiscal year 2020 and fiscal 2021 federal planning funds for partial support of the study along the Bloomington BMC MPO meetings in April will include additional details. It actually should have read the BMC MPO will use surplus fiscal year 2020 and 2021 federal planning funds for partial support of the study along with Bloomington transit funds.
Move approval with those corrections.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any public comment? Seeing none. A roll call vote, please, Ryan?
Sure, before moving on, who was the second?
Penny.
Thank you. Okay, Samples,
Estein wasn't here on the 12th.
Ridge,
Yes.
Wiltz,
Yes.
Bannock,
Yes.
Githens,
Yes.
Nickel,
Yes.
Wallman,
Yes.
Robinson,
Yes.
Clements,
Yes.
Ryder Band.
Yes, there we go, yes. Keeps
Thank you. That
disappearing.
also is 901.
Thank you, Ryan. Communications from the chair. I don't have any. Reports from officers and or committees. Citizens Advisory Committee.
Yes, CAC met and we reviewed the TIP amendments that we are going to be addressing and suggested that the policy committee support, the CAC supports those amendments. They also looked at the draft PWP and suggested also that that be approved by the policy committee.
Thank you, Sarah. Technical Advisory Committee.
Yeah, this is Lou May. Pat, just so you know, I talked to Kent and I sent him a link to the meeting, so he's going to try that. Hopefully he'll be on in just a moment.
Thank you.
The Technical Advisory Committee met last month and reviewed the TIP amendments that are on today's policy committee agenda, as well as the draft 2022 Unified Work Program. And the TAC recommended unanimously that the policy committee approve both of those. Thank you.
Thank you. Reports from the MPO staff. Item A is Coordinated Human Services Public Transportation Plan.
Okay, I wanted to give policy committee a report on this. This is a survey by the Indiana Department of Transportation through a consulting firm, RLS and Associates. RLS and Associates is completing the plan for the MPO under a contract with the Indiana Department of Transportation. And part of this plan is a public survey. I contacted the consultant last week. Thus far, they've only received 14 surveys, which I said was totally inadequate because one of those 14 is myself. So what I will do is on Tuesday of next week, we will send out an email blast. Ryan and I will send out an email blast to all of the members of the policy committee, the CAC and the technical advisory committee and others, probably a community-wide press release too, for that matter, encouraging people to fill out this survey so that way we get an accurate assessment of what transportation, human services transportation needs are in the Bloomington, Monroe County urbanized area. And that's all I have to report on that. Oh, and the consultant will be meeting with the Technical Advisory Committee later this month and also with the Citizens Advisory Committee later this month. That's it.
Thank you. Next item is fiscal year 2022 to 2026 Transportation Improvement Program, call for projects and development timeline.
Okay, I want to let everyone know that the MPO is issuing a call for projects for fiscal year 2022-2026 Transportation Improvement Program. That issue goes out Monday, as in next Monday. And the response time is 6 weeks for the LPAs, the local planning agencies. That's for Monroe County, Bloomington, Town of Ellettsville, and Bloomington Transit. There's a 6-week interval in here, 4 weeks to put together your projects, 2 weeks to meet with your administrative boards or councils or whatever you have to report to get their approval. But the deadline will be April 30th. And then the schedule will be in the call for projects and the whole packet that we will send out. We'll have all the applications and all the other information. We're looking at a total of approximately $3.9 million, slightly more than $3.9 million available to us. That money is allocated to us by the Department of Transportation based on population. So in other words, we get so many dollars per capita. I wish we could increase it more. And the per capita allocation is based on the 2010 census. So once the 2020 census data becomes available, we'll see a bump in some of the funding for us. And then we also have an adoption schedule in here in the call for projects. The end game is we're looking for an adoption by the policy committee. I believe it's September 10th of this calendar year. And we will be going through an extensive public hearing involvement process. The public hearing will all be virtual, of course, because we don't have any guarantees on CDC guidelines and what is safe at this point in time. So if you, and once the blast goes out, please contact Ryan or myself. Notice I put Ryan's name first. Please contact Ryan, Ryan or myself. And if you have any questions, we'll be happy to help you. We just want to spend the money. That's all. Thanks.
Pat, can I butt in? First of all, I apologize
Yes.
for being late. I
No,
had
that's right.
technical difficulties. This is Kent speaking. Lou helped me get the link that I couldn't get to work. So now I'm on. But when you're talking about, having these meetings virtually, have you been following the General Assembly as far as there's some legislation that I think may curtail our ability to have virtual meetings? I think what they're suggesting is that we have to have at least a small group of people in person, but other people will be able to go online. Have you followed any of that?
No, the only thing I've followed is that, well, the General Assembly itself is meeting without masks. That's one thing that I've followed, which, I won't say anything about that. But, and then the other thing that I followed is the General Assembly is trying to curtail the governor's authority for issuing emergencies. So I don't know how far some of this stuff will go. I'm being gentle here, calling it stuff. Some of this proposed legislation will go. And I'm not even dealing with it. Department of Transportation Federal Highway has ignored it up to this point in time, and we shall too, until it becomes a reality, if it becomes a reality with General Assembly before the session is over with.
Well, none of us knows what they're going to do, but I just wondered if you'd heard anything through the MPO Council.
No, nobody in the MPO Council has mentioned it all. The only thing in the MPO Council we've discussed is the fact that the General Assembly voted to meet without masks, which against the CDC guidelines. And what can you say to that? And the answer is keep your mouth shut and don't say anything. So that's the only thing that we've discussed thus far. But all the other MPOs are all meeting virtually. NDOT is meeting virtually. NDOT will be doing an extensive statewide transportation improvement project series of meetings this summer. And all of those are scheduled for virtual. Nothing will be in person. Because this pandemic is long way to go before it's over with, counter to what some individuals would say. So we're anticipating the balance of this calendar year will remain virtual. And if we get back to in person, it'll be extensively separated distance. And when we do that, maybe it's Assembly Hall. I don't know.
Well, for what it's worth, I like being able to do this virtually, but I do understand that a lot of people, public people in particular, don't like that. But
yeah. Once the emergency is over with, too, I can see that we will do a mix where we will have meetings like this, but also in person, where people can teleport in, so to speak. So this has changed the dynamic on everything. I anticipate we'll be doing this process for quite some time, into my gray years, I'll say.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, does it answer your question?
Yes.
I have
Okay.
2 questions.
Sure.
One is you mentioned 4 LPAs. Does rural transit and Indiana Transit also, are they also our LPAs that get?
Yes, I'm sorry. Rural transit is eligible also.
IU Transit?
And IU Transit is eligible also. All of those are eligible. Yes, I'm sorry. I just went. Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
My second question is, I know that back in the fall, when we were doing something, we were talking about, I think it was our long-term, our long-range transportation plan. We talked about a freight summit happening early this year. Is that been scheduled? Is that going to happen? Can you give us an update on that, please?
It will happen. It hasn't happened yet. It will happen once we resolve the work program and the transportation improvement program. So the most likely, and I need to get with, I need to form an advisory group is what I need to do with the greater Monroe County Chamber of Commerce and business community. But, and we have to do that in consultation with the local governments too, for that matter. It hasn't happened yet. It's in process. The most likely timetable right now looks like August, September is when we will convene our first meeting. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, thank you.
All right. Moving on to old business, we have none. New business, fiscal year 2020 to 2024 Transportation Improvement Program amendments. Item 1 is DES number 1902890, NDOT Seymour District, IDIQ, bridge maintenance at various locations.
Lisa, if I may, I see that Kate has a question perhaps on the previous topic
Thank
first.
you. Thanks, Ryan.
Thanks, Ryan. I do have a question, and I guess it's old business, but it's also related to the previous agenda item, the survey that's being distributed and perhaps not completed to the extent we'd like. And I know we've talked about this before, so pardon me if you've already told me this and I've forgotten, but where is it being specifically sent besides just word of mouth spreading it?
The survey itself, we have an extensive, we've got the policy committee mailing list, the technical advisory committee mailing list. We have an extensive citizens advisory committee mailing list beyond the current members. And then we will also send it out in a public press release. And if we have contact information for some of the human services providers in Bloomington, we will send that out to them also electronically, or we'll physically call them. The consultant is supposed to be the consultant is supposed to be developing a comprehensive list of who all the human service providers are for transportation in Monroe County. I don't know who they are right now. I mean, it's a long list, I'll say that. But we will work together to make sure that we maximize the distribution and maximize the distribution for the general public too. I mean, the Metropolitan Transportation Plan survey, which we completed last year, if you remember, we had 459 respondents. And I don't know if we'll get to the 400 level, but I sure as God would like to get to the 100 or 200 level in terms of respondents at this point. Does that answer your question?
It does. I would hope, and I don't see that, I see that we're asked about a zip code and what county we live in, which seems appropriate. But if there would be a way to know who, not specifically individuals even, but even if we could track which service agencies then provided some responses, I just fear that we might not be getting data from the critical audiences for this survey.
The survey goes direct to the consultant. The MPO staff sees none of this.
Sure, right. And that is,
and the consultant has the responsibility for keeping track of who the service agencies are that respond and against the list of who is providing services and who responds. So that way we know who's been, I don't want to use the term naughty and nice, but I want to see, who has responded and who hasn't. And then we'll do an additional reach out. The consultant will either do the reach out or the staff will do the reach out to that agency.
And could that happen? Because I remember there was an end date for this that seemed to me to be end of March, or am I completely wrong?
The end
End of
of March. Yeah, the end of March was the tentative scheduled date. The plan itself does not have to be completed until August or September. So what we could do is we could possibly extend it another month or another several weeks beyond this tentative date that we have of March 31st right now. We've already extended it once because the original date was the end of February. And then I asked for an extension on that several weeks ago. So we'll do whatever it takes.
Sure. And I mean, I'm not meaning to sound critical of you. I know that it's difficult, especially in current conditions, to really get these kinds of things where they need to be. And you're working with a consultant, and I've actually worked with this consultant before as well. So I mean, they're great.
Yeah,
they've got a lot going on. They should definitely know how to do what they're doing.
Yeah, they do.
It is, though, very concerning if you've already extended the deadline and we only have 14 responses. Something's not working. And so I would support doing what your office can to jump in, either with the consultant or in addition to the consultant's efforts, to specifically contact directors of these agencies that might be serving folks. Anyway, that's my so.
Well, this is, I mean, doing outreach next week is our alpha and omega. I mean, that's what Ryan may not know that, but that is our sole focus next week. I mean, this week it was getting the transportation improvement program call for projects out the door on Monday morning, and then finishing up the work program for presentations to all the committees and making that submission. We make that submission next Tuesday, and then the call for projects goes out on Monday. So therefore, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, our sole focus will be on this. Because this concerns me deeply in the sense that we haven't gotten a response. I mean, we've thrown a rock into a deep well and we haven't had a splash at this point in time. And it's like, hello, is anybody out there?
Right.
And I know this is a difficult time right now because spring is here. The pandemic is still on. We've got children out and we've got human services needs something fierce because of the pandemic out there, plus normal economic conditions. So yeah, I mean, it's understandable, but still we will do everything next week.
Yeah. Well, and I appreciate that. I know you will. Looking at the target response audience, these are often folks who don't have a lot of technical savvy and internet access as well. So
yes, that's another deep concern. Because the target audience is an audience which doesn't necessarily have internet or doesn't necessarily have what I would call IT skills to be able to complete a survey like this. So instead, we're reaching out to the agencies themselves and the leader of those respective agencies to make sure that they're responding, for the clientele that they serve.
Mm-hmm.
If we have suggestions, Pat, for places to reach out to, would you like that to go to Ryan or to you?
Both.
Okay. All right. Thank you. That's what I wanted to know.
Yeah. Please. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. I'll probably send you a little email. I'll send Ryan.
Oh, please. Yeah.
I'll take it offline. Sorry.
Yeah. Don't feel bashful, please. Yeah. Send it. Anyone on the committee or anyone listening in here, please send us a list of suggestions. We'll be more than happy to do that. Yeah.
For what it's worth, I agree with Kate on this, and Pat, I don't blame you guys. But if we can only get 14 or even 100 or 200, responses. That's not a representative sample. We need to do better somehow.
Yeah.
So good luck.
Well, I will do handstands if we get 200. I promise you that. So, yes, Margaret?
I
I'm
would
sorry.
like to know who the consultant is, number one. And then number two, I would go so far as to say that 400 isn't a satisfactory number for this survey. And I'd like to know what metrics indicate the inclusiveness of our demographics that we serve. I really need more transparency on that.
Okay, the consultant is RLS and Associates. RLS and Associates they're an expert firm in terms of public transportation, particularly in small network type settings. RLS and Associates completed the rural transit route optimization study for rural transit 2 years ago. You might want to reference that study, or we can send it to you for that matter.
I was present on the MPO when they presented to us.
Yeah, they leave no rock unturned, and the principal in charge of this has extensive, very deep, extensive transit knowledge and human service provision knowledge and experience. And so I'm confident this is a great firm, great match for everything that we need to do. We didn't select the consultant. The consultant was assigned to us by the Department of Transportation. Otherwise, we would have had to have done the study ourselves with staff of 2. And this isn't exactly our wheelhouse. Now, your second question was?
What metrics do we have that indicate the inclusiveness of our demographic community that we serve?
I'll have to ask the consultant because I don't know. I mean, what they're looking for is transit dependent or people that don't necessarily have automobiles. It may be individuals who have what I would call marginal economic capabilities or certain challenges, physical challenges or things like that. I mean, the demographic they're trying to reach is not, it's on the tail end of the bell curve is what I want to say. And so it makes it more difficult to contact that constituent representative group because those are the groups that may not necessarily have an internet in the home, or if they have access to an internet, it may be at the library, and I don't even know if the library is open anymore right now, or they may have other challenges that are out there. So that's the constituency group that they're going after. And then your third question was, I'm sorry?
Well, my statement was a response rate of even 400 is not satisfactory.
Well, we're attempting to achieve a statistically significant response rate. And I don't know what the population size is out there. If we can get a response rate of, say, 100 to 200, just based on an analysis of those, we would have a good idea of whether we're reaching a population with answers that are more or less the same.
I just don't want to be participating or contributing to the widely held criticism that we're creating an echo chamber.
I agree.
So that's.
I agree. Yeah. The challenge is, how do you reach this constituency?
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
In a pandemic.
Yes. Yes. Thank you.
Through virtual methods. Yes. I mean, we're out there on the far end of the bell curve, so to speak. But yeah, we will do everything that we can to make sure that we optimize this. Yes. Does anyone else have any questions?
All right, moving to new business. First is the NDOT bridge maintenance at various locations.
Brian?
Yes, just a second while I scroll down to it. Here we
Okay,
are.
sure, you're fine, thank you. I know, thank you.
All right, yes, we have two tip amendments that both regard bridge inspection and maintenance. The first one is for bridge maintenance and repair within the NDOT Seymour district. And that is a construction phase in the fiscal year of 2022 using surface transportation block grant funding, $800,000 of federal funds with a state match of $200,000 for a total of $1 million. And this is a project that primarily works on system preservation. That could be joint replacement, thin deck overlay, scour protection, railing repair, and others similar type of work. And the second one is just for Monroe County for inspection and inventory, and that will be preliminary engineering for fiscal years 2022 to 2025 with a total federal funding of $241,924 with a local match of $60,481 for a total of $302,405. I'm not sure if there's any more information that we have other than that, unless Pat or Chris would like to expand a little bit more on this.
Thank you, Ryan. Any questions or comments, or would want to hear from Chris or Pat on these projects?
I actually do have a question, and it's just out of curiosity. I don't mean to, be critical of anybody, but the Seymour district of NDOT, that's a pretty big district, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
So when we're talking about $1 million for this bridge thing, that's a huge district. Most of that's not in our jurisdiction, is it?
Correct.
Okay, that's all I need to know. I just was curious. Thank you.
The nature of this contract is it's almost like on-call work. So it could be various locations throughout the Seymour district. We don't really know where the needs are going to pop up, but this is to handle those maintenance issues that pop up.
Yeah, I get it. I was just curious. My dad used to be a district engineer for the Crawfordsville district. So that's why I was kind of wondering. They're big districts.
Madam Chair,
Sorry.
Madam Chair, since these are less controversial amendments, I'd like to take them both together. And I propose that the policy committee approves both of our tip amendments as expressed, rather than doing them separately.
Okay.
Is it time for motions?
Well, it's always time for motions, Ken. Motions.
I'll second it if it's appropriate. If it's the right time, I'm all for it.
So we'll take that as Sarah's motion.
And then we can, it sounds like it's been seconded. And
okay.
I don't know that it needed a motion. It was a suggestion. And I guess since you're the chair, it would kind of be your prerogative whether we did them together or separately. So
I have no problem of doing them together. They're
Right.
pretty standard. So no, I have no issues of
Okay.
doing those in one motion.
So we won't have a vote then until we've heard the second one and had discussion and heard from the public.
Well, I think Ryan addressed both of the projects already. So it would be okay.
I thought he only gave us the NDOT one.
No, he talked about both. He mentioned both of them.
Oh, okay, great. Then let's look at the public.
Okay, do we have any public comment or questions? And actually, do we have any from other board members? I thought Penny, you might have had a question a while ago.
Yeah, so these are basically just for emergency repairs. Is that what I'm understanding? At least for the
Chris,
Seymour
that-
district?
I guess, Chris, that would be for the state question on that tip amendment.
Yeah, it's not quite emergency, but things that we need to get to quickly from a preservation standpoint, so things don't deteriorate further.
And the county,
That answers the question.
this is our typical cycle for county bridges that we're required to do. So we have a motion and a second. Not seeing any public comment. Any more questions from the board? I'm not seeing any. So roll call would be appropriate, Ryan?
Sure. All right, starting with you, Ridge,
Yes.
Wiltz,
Yes.
Bannock,
Yes.
Githens,
Yes.
Nickel,
Yes.
Wallman,
Yes.
Robinson,
Yes.
Clements,
Yes.
McDaniel,
Yes.
Ryder Band,
Yes.
Samples.
Yes.
I have 11-0.
Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you.
Next is draft of the fiscal year 2022 Unified Planning Work Program.
Thank you. I'll wait till he scrolls down there. You can stop right there for the, Brian, if you could back up to the planning emphasis areas.
Oh.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, thank you very much.
There we go.
Yeah, the Unified Planning Work Program is the MPO's contract with the Indiana Department of Transportation, Federal Highway Administration, and Federal Transit Administration for the services that we provide to the local public agencies in our urbanized area. And including the whole list of those that I didn't include the last time in mentioning the tip. But anyway, it's our contract of our activities that we will be doing in fiscal year 22. It's the tip, the Unified Planning Work Program is currently a fiscal year 2021, which we're currently in, and in 22, they work it on a 2-year basis for contract purposes to make it easier for NDOT central office. Anyway, at the beginning of each fiscal year prior, in preparation for the planning work program each year, the Federal Highway Administration and Federal Transit Administration issue what they call planning emphasis areas. In other words, we have our normal contract work, which we're expected to complete every fiscal year, but then we have annual emphasis areas, and these usually come down from Washington, D.C. And the planning emphasis areas this year for fiscal year 2022 are pedestrian safety, resiliency, thank you, metropolitan planning area and urbanized area boundaries. I'm trying to read this off the screen. And then human services coordinated transportation plan, and then micro mobility. And I'll go through those in the document, in the draft document, which we circulated to you, beginning on page 6 of that document. Would you get there? Yep, a little too far. There you go, thank you. Pedestrian safety, large emphasis on pedestrian safety because there's been a significant increase in pedestrian fatalities over the past decade, a 44% increase in pedestrian fatalities versus the 9% increase in all fatalities. Pedestrian safety is a highest priority of our own MPO right now. And so then this makes us, we're already looking at this, but we'll look at it even more intensely with traffic engineers in the city and the county and the entire urbanized area, and also with NDOT. we will address this through planning emphasis area work element number 202. And then the second emphasis area is resiliency. This has to do with climate change, and climate change was one of those verboten words prior to Election Day in November. And now we're looking at resiliency, and we recognize that we have challenges out there for the built infrastructure and also for the planned infrastructure that we will be addressing. The next emphasis area, I'm sorry, here just a second, flipping my pages, is the metropolitan planning area and urbanized area boundaries. Since the census was completed, the Bureau of the Census will be working with local jurisdictions and also the county on establishing the metropolitan planning area and the urban area boundaries. We'll be working with them. This is a once in a decade type of activity that we're required to do, and we'll make sure that we work very, very closely with all the GIS coordinators on this also. The Human Service Coordinated Transportation Plan is already underway, so we're already a step ahead on this, but nonetheless, we have it in here in the work program through work element number 602. And then finally, the final emphasis area is micromobility. Again, Bloomington is a step ahead of federal highway and federal transit on this, in that we're already looking at micromobility, namely scooters. We're looking at that, and we will be working that through work element number 104 of the work program. Then after the emphasis areas, let me go through the budget. Ryan, if you'll scroll down to page 10, unless anybody has any questions about the emphasis areas. I'm sorry. No questions?
I do. I have some.
Okay.
Number one, I just would like to know how our pedestrian injury accident rate is compared to the 44% increase nationwide. That's my first question. The second question I have is what changes have been made since the adoption by the MPO of the complete street programs and our metrics for program success? And have any of them, any more metrics involved seeking the opinion of drivers, or metrics of drivers, or in other words, a more holistic approach to looking at the transportation system than the 2 pages of metrics that were adopted that primarily analyzed micromobility and pedestrian program participation, because it is an ecosystem.
Okay, Ryan, would you want to answer on the pedestrian safety issue?
Sure, yeah. I mean, part of this is to study pedestrian safety. That's why we are, I mean, this is a priority for this UPWP, and we are in the process of currently studying that as it compares to trends nationally, as well as more microcosms of our own transportation system here in Monroe County.
Well, it's been openly stated by members of the committee that they'd like to make our streets less safe. So I just want to make sure that that we're including the entire ecosystem rather than continuing to reinforce an idea that's not inclusive of all users of the transportation system.
Safety is our #1 priority.
I would hope so.
Well, it's the alpha and the omega. I mean, if we can't make safe transportation system, then there's a serious problem.
That's right.
The safety, overall safety in the urbanized areas is very good. We did have 3 pedestrian fatalities in recent years. We had 1 bicycle fatality also, but that bicycle fatality was outside of the urbanized area in a rural part of the county. We are analyzing those 3 pedestrian fatalities, We're analyzing those in consultation with the engineering department. I do want to say that there has been one major change proposed in that right turns on reds in the downtown urban area. There's a proposal before the city council to eliminate right turns on reds. So that way, if you're facing a red, you can't turn, period. And that makes for safer pedestrian passage in crosswalks. City of Bloomington is also undergoing a crosswalks improvement project that's in the current transportation improvement program. They're also undergoing a curb ramp, downtown curb ramp project. That's in the transportation improvement program also. In terms of automobiles, we're looking at all of the we're looking at the full spectrum of total crashes within the urbanized area over a 5-year period now instead of a 3-year period, which gives us a better rolling average of what's really out there. Last year, travel was down. Last calendar year, travel was down significantly, almost 70% at one point in time. And then it's since rebounded, but it's still about approximately 20 to 25% on the state level below what it really was. Crash rates nationally and also in the state of Indiana and locally decreased in 2020, but fatality rates ironically increased on the state level and also on the national level because people were speeding more. So therefore, we'll be looking at corridors in terms of speed, and we'll also be looking at corridors in terms of their joint use.
I would like to urge that we ask the drivers of vehicles, different types of vehicles like trucks and motor vehicles and buses, what makes them feel unsafe on the street and what aggravates them on the streets, and how can we also improve the driving experience so that we can increase safety of all users in the system.
We will be doing that when we do our truck study, our freight study that we'll be initiating later this fall. We will be doing that.
And the automobiles as well.
Well, we can include automobiles in that survey. Yes.
Thank you.
As far as the complete streets metrics go, there have been no changes in those since the last time, since they were initially adopted with a broad update. I think that was 3 years ago. We did an update on the complete streets policy. There have been no change in the metrics since that time. Does that answer your question?
And how does a person try to participate in changing that document? Because I suggested the inclusion of different metrics that I've had no feedback or response to.
Your suggestions came before the policy committee after you were temporarily off of the committee. Those suggestions came before the policy committee at another meeting, and the policy committee voted to maintain the standards that were already adopted. We will be doing an update, again, review. This is an annual review of the complete streets policy this fall. It'll be in October or November of this calendar year.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions?
Pat, I just have one on pedestrian safety.
Yes.
I'm assuming this is Indianapolis, but it says there's only one city in Indiana that's been designated a pedestrian bicycle focused city by FHWA. Is that Indy? Okay.
Yes.
Just curious. Thanks.
Yeah, that was the city of Indianapolis, and that was news to me. And that was news to all of the other MPOs in Indiana except Indianapolis. So that would have been a national designation, and I don't know how that occurred, but obviously we want to make sure that Bloomington reaches that designation also. Okay.
Thanks.
Sure.
So, Pat, on page 4 of this section, there under system preservation, it says there's an emphasis, or to emphasize the preservation of existing transportation system.
Yes.
Because, I mean, I know that we can't do a lot in terms of rail and light rail, that we can't do some of the things we'd like to do. But what about installing more electric charging stations, things like that?
Oh,
How
that,
do these things come in?
yeah, that's absolutely in there. In the Metropolitan Transportation Plan adopted by the Policy Committee in October of last year, I think it was October 9th, we had the policy, we had a whole set of policies in there. I mean, safety is the number one issue, preservation and maintenance is second, added capacity is a third priority, and then dead last are brand new facilities. The infrastructure for charging stations and electric vehicles, that was included in the policy. I don't remember the page or the section that it was in there, but it was included in there because that's something that we're preparing for right now. Does that answer your question? I mean, in terms of preservation and maintenance, we're looking at taking care of the existing infrastructure investments that are out there for the city and the county. And then looking at added capacity in a third rate, and then new facilities would be dead last in terms of a priority. Does that answer your question, Penny? I'm sorry, we can't hear you. Penny?
It
Can't
doesn't
hear
show
you.
you muted, Penny, but we can't hear you.
Yeah, it doesn't show muting. I'm sorry, I can't hear. I don't know, Lisa, it's up to you whether you want to proceed on. And I could answer a question later.
Perhaps she could type stuff into the chat.
Yeah. Oh, it says her laptop is going wonky. Sorry. Okay.
That's the technical term.
Very scientific. Lisa, I think I'll just proceed on for now until she can join us. After the planning emphasis areas is the budget. The budget is a 2-year budget beginning on page 10. Again, like I emphasized before, we're currently in fiscal year 21. This is for the fiscal year 22 element of the work program. If you go all the way down to the bottom and look at the far right-hand column in terms of total, you'll see that in fiscal year 2021, our total budget was $353,631, whereas the proposed budget is $341,357. It's a cut. And that cut was assigned to us by the Department of Transportation based on the allocation of funds to them and then given to us based on a per capita basis. So therefore, we're doing more with less in truly fashion. And then it also shows on page 10 all of the work tasks that we're completing, how many of those how those work tasks, for example, 100 through 600, how many of those would be done with MPO staff, how many with Bloomington Transit, how many with consultant or supplies. CSA is a contract service agreement. Now, I will tell you right up front, this budget is what was given to us by the Department of Transportation. We will be adding an extra $50,000 to $55,000 of unspent fiscal year 20 money. We will be adding that into work element number 500. We'll be putting in at least $50,000 to $55,000 for Bloomington Transit to complete an alternative fuels and infrastructure assessment facility. That will be in here. It's not in here currently because the Department of Transportation did not give us the instructions on how to include that in at this point in time. But the document that you will see in April will have an additional $50,000 to $55,000 in here for Bloomington Transit. And then on page 11, this shows the object class budget by funding source, where you can see salaries have gone down. Salaries are going down in fiscal year 2022. Fringe benefits are up. Indirect costs are up. Those are because the Planning and Transportation Department split from the Engineering Department, and therefore the overhead, the indirect costs went up. Bloomington Transit's still the same for now. We'll be adding, like I said, another 50,000 in there, 55,000. Consultant supplies, you can see that went down because in fiscal year 2021, we were to acquire new traffic counting equipment. The engineering department said that they did not want to buy the equipment since we changed city engineers, so therefore that is out. Contract service agreements were only up slightly from what we were in the previous year. If you look at page 12 then, thank you. Page 12, where you look at the federal local splits. Again, this just tells another story where we're at 350,000, 53,000 right now, and then we'll be down to 341,000 with the start of the new fiscal year, July 1st. And then finally on page 13, 13 shows us our open purchase orders right now. And you can see the fiscal year 20 purchase order. We have a surplus of $55,283.35. This is an unaudited amount. So therefore, I'm somewhat reluctant to do the full 55,000. Instead, we'll probably do 50,000 or slightly above 50,000 for that, which will go directly to Bloomington Transit. And then I won't go through the individual work elements themselves unless anyone out there has a question on that. And then jumping to the very end, we have in the appendices, we have in there the inclusion of our urbanized area, the planning emphasis areas letter, the approval of our cost allocation plan rates, and then also a sample transit operator local match assurance. And then, yeah, there you go. And there was a question about this last time about our cost allocation fringe. The question came in, how do we justify increasing the number of individuals in the MPO? And the answer is we're not. It's Ryan and I, that's it, period. And then there are supplemental use of hours for Darla Frost, who's an administrative assistant. She's the one that schedules our Zoom meetings and also brings those up. We have minimal overview by Beth Rosenbarger as our supervisor, and her hours are something like 13 hours for the entire year. And then we have other minimal hours in there. The vast bulk of all of our money for the coming year is just Ryan and myself, two-person shop. So, questions, anybody, please?
Pat, aren't these overhead rates, they're all audited and approved by the feds, aren't they?
Yes.
That's
Yes.
okay.
Yeah. Yes. We went through a federal audit, an extensive federal audit in October, November, and December to verify previous rates. Yes. And the methodology we used is the Office of Management and Budget Circular 121, I think it's called, or something like that. It's standard methodology for calculating cost rates and assigning costs. And all of this is also reviewed by the Indiana Department of Transportation prior to an approval. So the letter issuance shows that we're in full compliance and that we're meeting all of the federal guidelines.
Thank you.
Any
Madam
other
Chair?
questions?
I'd like to move the approval of the draft fiscal year 2022 Unified Planning Work Program.
Excuse me, this is just a draft, isn't it, Pat?
Yes, just a draft, submission of a draft.
So we don't need to approve it today? We wait till April, is that?
It's approving a submission of a draft.
Okay, sorry,
Yeah.
Sarah. Sorry,
Yeah.
Sarah. Go ahead then, please. I'll
Feel
second.
free to second it.
I don't even say I'll second it. Kent
So we have a
Kent beat me to the
motion
punch.
and a second was from Kent or Scott. Any comments from the board? And any public comment? Seeing none, I believe we'd be ready for a roll call, Ryan.
All righty. Wiltz,
Yes.
Bannock,
Yes.
Githens,
Yes.
Nickel,
Yes.
Wallman,
Yes.
Robinson,
Yes.
No.
Clements, McDaniel,
Yes,
Ryder Band,
Yes.
Samples,
Yes.
Ridge.
Yes.
That is 10-1.
All right. So going on to communications from committee members.
just as a kind of an information item for you. The BT board is going to meet next week, and one of the things that we're talking about doing is submitting a request for proposals for a contract for a management company. We've had a management company for over 30 years, and Lou May he's on here somewhere. I think he's listening. He's going to be retiring sometime within the next year. So we want to look ahead. So we're keeping our options open. We want to move ahead and try and see if we can get a good company to come in and give us some good candidates. And if that doesn't work, we'll go out and try something else. But that's our plan at this point. So we have a few months to work with it, but it's going to happen in the next year. That's all.
Kent, can you also tell us, I think we're coming up to the end of the free ride. What are the plans for BT and COVID restrictions and that sort of thing?
Well, that's being done pretty much on a month-by-month basis. The board agreed at our last meeting to extend it for another month, but it will probably be on the agenda again next year, or next month. Most other transit systems in the state are not doing that. We're still doing the boarding from the back, and we're trying to protect our drivers. And it's on a month-by-month basis.
I'd like to just extend my thanks to the Bloomington Transit drivers and for all the hard work they've done throughout this pandemic, and also for the leadership you're initiating to continue service to our broader community. They really do a lot of heavy lifting for us, and the drivers and you, and I just want to thank you.
Well, thank you, and thank Lou. I'm sure he's listening, but thank all of our drivers, and they've really, they're in the front lines. So
exactly,
we're very grateful.
Thank you.
Any other comments from any board members, suggestions for future agendas?
I guess I'd
none.
just like to remind people that it'll be up to us to really help our staff to disseminate this survey of the Coordinated Human Services Public Transportation Plan to anyone and everyone that we know of, because it's really hard for the two of them to do it all. And our consultant doesn't really know our community the way we do. So I think that it would really behoove us to help get that important numbers of participants so that we can have a reasonable idea of where we need those services and how we're going to do it.
Yes, thank you, Sarah.
Thank you, Sarah.
Yeah. It might be something good for Penny, for us to maybe mention. We could put it on our county webpage and mention it next week at the commissioners meeting.
Yeah, I was also thinking that we need to make sure we get it out to places like Life Designs and Stone Belt and folks like that, because a lot of their consumers.
Oh, gosh, yes.
Yeah.
So again, send those lists of folks we think we need to Ryan and Pat, so that they're well aware. And by the way, the library is open on a
Okay.
limited basis. And
Good.
I think it's important to be able to use the library, whether it's postings or using the Friends of the Library to disseminate that information more widely. But the library is open for business.
Great. Thank you,
Thank
Sarah.
you.
Any other comments from board members?
Are we also sending out the survey to the MCCSC schools and RBB, because some of the students use the bus system and the scooters and things like that?
We can. I'll send it out to the transportation directors. Thank you.
Pat, have you talked to Yael at all about potentially putting a press release together on the city side?
No, I talked to her offline about it. We'll be doing that next week.
Great. Sounds good.
Yeah.
Great. Our upcoming meetings are for our technical advisory committee is March 28th at 10 a.m. and it's virtual. The Citizens Advisory Committee, March 28th at 6:30 p.m., which is virtual. And the next MPO Policy Committee meeting is April 9th at 1:30, and it will also be virtual.
Can I just add that anyone who's interested in hearing from the consultants, as Pat mentioned, the consultant will be at the CAC meeting. And as a citizen, one can participate in those meetings. So if you're interested and want more feedback about the consultant or the Human Services Public Transportation Plan, come join us.
Great.
Please.
Thank you, Sarah.
Sarah, are you talking about Christy Campbell? Is that who's coming?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Seeing no any further items, I guess we move for an adjournment.
Thank you so much.